Hi, my name is Joe Thayer. I'm with Macomb Family Services in the Prevention Department, Director of Prevention. I'm also a certified prevention consultant. Today we're going to be talking about the truth about electronic cigarettes. And with me I have from the Prevention Department, let's start off with Miss Leah.
Hi everyone, my name is Miss Leah. I'm a prevention specialist with Macomb Family Services. Miss Ashley.
Hey, I'm Ashley Katowski. I am a prevention specialist and an outpatient therapist at Macomb Family Services. I work with both mental health and substance abuse clients. Cody.
My name is Mr. Cody. I am a certified prevention specialist at Macomb Family Services. And I also serve on the Northern Macomb Prevention Coalition.
Perfect. And I'll also let everybody know that typically we run these, whether it be a PowerPoint demonstration like this or our other activities inside of a classroom. So we ask the students if they would like, they can call us, you know, Mr. Joe, Mr. Cody, Miss Ashley, or Miss Leah. So it's a little less formal than Mr. Thayer, Mr. Schmidt, Miss Katowski, or Miss Simpson. So I'll just let it be at that. And again, like I said, that's in case we're in front of a group of students in a classroom. So again, today we're going to talk about the truth about electronic cigarettes. And this is a presentation from the tobacco section, part of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. And we found this, actually this was given to us via email after attending the Substance Use Disorder Conference, the statewide conference. So if you're interested in this slideshow, you can email me and I can get you that information. That is jthayer@macombfamily.org. And I can email you this presentation if you're interested in it. So we're going to start off with Miss Ashley. She's going to go over a number of slides, and then we'll hand it off to Miss Leah and then Mr. Cody. And of course, at any time, you know, any of us might jump in and add some information as well too.
All right. So we're going to talk about vaping products today. Basically what we're going to go through. What is a vape or an electronic cigarette? How does it work? What are some health concerns we have? Why are people in the state of Michigan, specifically youth individuals, choosing to vape? What is the climate kind of like in Michigan? How do people feel about it? What does it look like? And some other resources. That's also what we're going to go through. All right, so these are some different forms of electronic cigarettes or vaping devices. The traditional one, or the one that used to be really popular, was the tanks and mods. Those were what we saw when they first started coming out, and they started in 2004 in China, and then they moved their way here. And a lot of what we saw were the mods and the tanks. Those create the bigger plumes of what we're going to call an aerosol. We'll get into why it's not a vapor. So that bigger plume of smoke or aerosol was created by those. They're rechargeable typically. Then the more common ones that we see now, especially with our youth individuals, is going to be the rechargeable ones. You can see the one that looks like a Juul device. The others kind of look more like a Sorin or a Drip. And then the last one is a disposable e-cigarette. So they tend to look more like cigarettes. They're smaller, easier to hide, and they're one use, so you don't recharge them. You kind of use it for whatever the battery and the juices allow, and then you throw it away. So not as eco-friendly. All right, so here is the inner workings of an electronic cigarette. Most of the device is actually, it's rechargeable or just the battery in general. So that would be what the base of it mostly is. And then you're going to have a heating coil. I'm kind of just going to go through the ones that are more important to understand. So the heating coil, that's going to be made out of different metals, and the battery heats that or activates that heats up the vapors, or not the vapors, the liquid, or the e-juice, whatever people feel like calling it. But the liquid that then, once it touches the heating coil, it turns into the aerosol, which is then breathed in by the individual. at the mouthpiece. All right, and so as I said, we were going to kind of talk about why it's called an aerosol and not a vapor. So a vapor has to be a water substance. It's kind of become our thing. I drink tea whenever we're doing these presentations, and there's vapor that comes off of my tea because it's hot water that creates a vapor. When it comes to the vaping devices, they are not vapor, they are aerosols. So the liquid actually is projected out of the mouthpiece. It's not just kind of evaporating out of it. And there is more to it than just water. And we're going to talk about what different things are inside of a vaping device or inside of the e-juice. It's not going to be these harmless like water vapors and things like that. There's different chemicals and things that once they're heated, they turn into carcinogens. Most people would know an aerosol, like an aerosol can of like hairspray or cleaning products, things like that. So it's actually heavier than a vapor where it sits on the surface if you don't clean it up. And it sits in people's lungs when they breathe it in.
Yeah, and just to point out, we did have, unfortunately, a young man in the state of Michigan that had a double lung transplant. He's still alive now. He actually does some presentations as well too, and he used vape products. So.
All right, and so these are just some of those, like we were saying, chemicals that are inside of the vaping juice. So nicotine is a big one. That's the addictive chemical that is inside of tobacco. So e-cigarettes are a tobacco byproduct. They're not traditional tobacco, but they do have that nicotine that is addictive inside of the cigarettes. There's also other chemicals. So we talked about the coil, and that's made of different metals. And so it says nickel, tin, and lead. Those things, when the coil is heated continually, it starts to break down. So they've found actually in both what is inhaled and exhaled from a vaping device, there are fine particles of those heavy metals. So they are breaking off and the person's breathing them in and sometimes exhaling them. So they're not staying in the device. And obviously you can see why we wouldn't really want, nickel, tin, or lead like sitting in our lungs, and why it would cause infections and things like that. There's obviously other particles and other chemicals, diacetyl, which causes lung disease like popcorn lung and things like that.
In some of these chemicals, diacetyl would be one of them. With the Food and Drug Administration, actually is okay if a person has it as a food product. But because it's being used in a form that's different than if somebody consumes it by eating it, it is being heated up by some form of an element. It changes its chemical compound, things of that nature. That's why it causes, one of the reasons why it causes such a problem in the lungs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Ashley.
Well, and I was gonna say, sometimes what people will say is the flavoring that is put into these vaping devices is completely safe. We use it for things like chapstick or bubblegum or things like candies, that's how we flavor them. And then they're like, oh, we just put it into the vaping device. However, what most people aren't is they aren't chemists, and they don't understand the chemistry behind when those different items are heated to a temperature, their chemical compound changes to become something that's dangerous to our bodies. So it's safe, like Joe was saying, it's safe if it's ingested orally as like a food substance. However, when you're heating it to the temperature that it needs to become an aerosol, it's actually dangerous to the body and the lungs.
And if you think about your lungs, most people have two lungs. And if you think about bubble wrap, most of us have had bubble wrap before. Think about your lungs as being bubble wrap. And basically what they are, they're tiny air sacs or alveoli. And what happens is this diacetyl will attach itself to that. It causes irritation, problems, and then the alveoli, the little bubble wrap, the little bubbles themselves, they actually will start to grow larger. And when that happens, that causes a problem with the lungs, and that's when people develop serious issues with their lungs, including pneumonia, which can obviously cause some very dramatic and difficult problems for people.
All right, and then these are just some examples of, like, you might hear the chemical names, but what they are also found in would be things like battery, pesticides, gasoline. So benzene is something that is found in traditional cigarettes. It's also found in electronics and cigarettes. And it's a component of gasoline. Things that are in paint thinners, formaldehyde, which is sometimes found in nail polish. But also, you know, one of the things we like to talk about with the students is who here has ever taken a class where they had to dissect something. You know, the reason that they smell really bad, but the corpse still looks somewhat fresh is because of the formaldehyde. So if you ever dissected a frog or something, do you really want to breathe in what was able to keep that from decomposing? Because that's something you really want to breathe in? And most of the time they're like, no. Actually, all the time they're like that. But yeah, so it's going to be things like that. Also, we know acetone and some things that are in paint. So lots of chemicals that, you know, you're told to use in a well-ventilated area. However, people are willingly breathing it into their lungs frequently. All right.
Miss Leah, do you want to take a couple of these slides?
Yeah, I was just about to ask Miss Ashley if she wanted a break.
Go for it.
All right, so what e-cigarettes are not? So e-cigarettes are not an approved U.S. Food and Drug Administration FDA quit tobacco device and should not be marketed as such. So things that you put in your body, they need to be approved by FDA, and e-cigarettes are not approved by FDA as a tobacco device that you should use to quit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and unfortunately, at the beginning, when vapes came into the United States, roughly around 2003 or so, one of the reasons that a number of them were sold was because they touted or they said that they would help people to stop smoking. And research does not indicate that that's actually the case.
All right, so some common myths believed about vaping along with some facts. So people say it's just water vapor, but it's not. Vaping is a chemical like formaldehyde, diacetyl, and things like that that we've already talked about, that they're going into their lungs and it's staying into their lungs. It's just flavoring. We talked about that a little bit. My vape says it's nicotine free. There's no way I'll become addicted. Some vapes that claim that they are nicotine free are actually not. Nicotine isn't bad for me. Nicotine exposure during the teen years can disrupt normal brain development. It can have long-lasting effects like increased impulsivity and mood disorders. I don't have an addictive personality. I won't get hooked on vapes. Vape delivers nicotine to the brain in as little as 10 seconds. And it just takes that long to become addicted to nicotine. Just because I vape doesn't mean I'm going to smoke cigarettes. Research has shown that teens who vape are more likely to try smoking cigarettes. All right, so the most popular vape that's out there right now is the Juul. So people have turned it kind of into a verb as well as like saying I'm juuling, things like that. So this is what the Juul will be looking like. So there's the body, so that is a rechargeable thing. So there's a charging dock that it kind of looks like a USB drive. So it's easy for the kids to hide. And then there's a couple different flavors that are on the market. But right now they're trying to take off a bunch of flavors that Juul has made.
Yeah, and as Miss Leah mentioned, Juul was very, very popular. And then they got a lot of bad publicity. And now there are some other products, which we'll go over as well, too, that are out there that are becoming more and more popular as well. So here's some pictures of some classic e-cigs.
And then one thing about Juuls real quick, I know we didn't cover it too much. There's this thing called jailbreaking. I don't remember, I thought there was a slide at some point where we talked about how a lot of individuals aren't just vaping nicotine products, they're vaping THC, which is the addictive chemical in marijuana. I don't remember if that's coming up or if we missed it. But so what people can do is they can jailbreak their Juul pods, so they're able to break it open and then fill it with their own liquids like THC oils and things like that. But then the danger of breaking it open is that you're damaging the compartment, and you could possibly risk it leaking, getting to the battery, causing corrosion, things like that. And also ingesting the oil in its purest form, which is poisonous, especially with the nicotine. So that was just something that I remembered.
It's coming up in a couple of slides, but yeah, very, very good points.
So this is the tank. So that's more of the mods that we talked about that were more popular in 2004 when the e-cigarettes first came out. So they're a lot bigger and a lot more easy to be seen.
Yeah, and I know some people that use these tanks as well too, and they've been vaping for quite a number of years now. And again, these are ones that you would have to buy the e-juice as well too, and you fill up the tanks. Unfortunately, that e-juice is very potent, and there's been a lot of calls to the Poison Control Center because kids might get their hands on it, or even the individual that's using the tank itself might have a problem with the amount of nicotine. If you have enough nicotine in one dosage, nicotine can cause someone's death, which is not a good thing.
These are just some of the flavors of the e-juices. A lot of the e-juices are trying to market towards teens because they're using things such as rainbow drops, aqua, root beer float, things like that. So those are some of the ones that are pictured in there.
Yeah, and there has been legislation that actually passed through at one point stopping the sale of this, but then there was some countermeasures that were made in the court of law. So it's still legal to sell these flavored products in the state of Michigan. It's going through the system now.
But they're not as regulated as traditional tobacco. So like what is actually in the bottle, like what is actually in the flavoring, we don't have as much information. Like we can test it, but like the actual regulation of like, is every bottle, you know, when you buy pop or when you buy like any other food product, you have an ingredient list that we can say, okay, this is exactly what's in it because it's FDA regulated. The juices, like people make it at their homes or they're like these small businesses that aren't as regulated yet. So sometimes that's where we're seeing some of the danger is that they aren't properly regulated, so we don't know really what's in it.
Yeah, and a good example in regard to that would be the Food and Drug Administration. They know because they go into the company, let's say for a can of tuna fish. We know that a can of tuna fish basically has 2 of 3 ingredients in it. It has tuna fish as the main ingredient, and then it either typically has water or oil. So there are two of those 3 things that are actually in tuna fish. And we know that for sure because the Food and Drug Administration, again, goes into that company, that manufacturer, and makes sure that that's all that's going into that can. Unfortunately, with the Food and Drug Administration, they do not have the authority to do that in regards to vape products and the e-liquids like we're seeing right here. Mr. Cody, do you have something?
Yeah, a lot of this is doing a lot more to recruit people to become nicotine users as opposed to just help people who are already nicotine users, because it's reaching a market of people who don't necessarily like tobacco smoke or flavoring, and people that might go for a sweeter flavor of or a sweeter way to ingest nicotine. So a lot of people wouldn't ever use nicotine just strictly because they don't like the smell or the taste of tobacco, and this, as opposed to being a quitting method, is almost just an alternative for people who don't like the taste of tobacco and want to use nicotine anyways. So it's kind of just broadening the market for tobacco as opposed to trying to cut down on it like it claims to.
Yes.
So this is just another electronic device. It's called the Sorin iShare. And it looks kind of similar to a Juul, so it has like the capability to hold the Juul pods in it, or like Ashley said, to be able to jailbreak those Juul pods and be able to use that. And then it also comes with a device that you can charge it, so it's rechargeable.
Yeah, and you can see it looks really similar to like an iPhone product or like an Apple product. So many people might just think these things are electronics and things that would be plugged in. So.
So these are the counterfeit pods, which fit in both the Juul and the Soren iShare. These are a little bit bigger, and they come more in a pack. So there's 5 in the pack, and then the Juuls actually come in 4 in a pack, and the price is lower than the regular Juul pods. Some more.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Miss Leah, but a lot of the issues too with the vaping illnesses, rumor-wise, has been that it has been from or off-brand pods and things that people have just bought like on the black market or online, things like that too. Which also is something that young people would go for just because they don't have to go to a store and things like that. So, sorry,
So these are more. Oh no, you're good. These are some more electronic devices. These are more of the ones that you have to put your own e-juice in, that you can't just buy with e-juice already in it, so you have to buy one of those bottles.
Yeah. And you can see that they're really sleek and like they don't look like anything that maybe like someone from an older generation has ever seen, especially for someone to use nicotine out of. So it's not like a pipe or anything like that. It's not a cigarette. So definitely concealable, something that younger people would be able to take into a private area and use maybe in like a public restroom when no one would know. And to me, my personal opinion is that's done on purpose. They used to have big tanks and mods and things that weren't as concealable. And I think that they realized that, hey, if we can make this so that kids can hide it from their parents, that we'll probably make a lot more money. Just kind of my thoughts on it. But
Mr. Cody,
Do you want to keep going?
Yeah, you want me to continue? Okay, so this one, I believe, has like a safety measure to it where it'll shut off after 8 seconds. And that might be so that it doesn't get too hot and different things like that. The pods don't leak onto people as they are poisonous. So as you see, it's a little bit more expensive as well. So they kind of made the one that may be safer for kids more expensive and doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. So. Soren Edge, you can see there's like a sleek design to it and some child-proof locks. So that would be if you click 5 times, you can unlock it and then use it. And as you can see, this one is even more expensive for the design and things like that. Myco kit. So this is something that they can have fit in the palm of people's hands. And might even be decorative, something that people could just kind of casually hang out with and become addicted.
yeah, again, you can look at the design. Obviously, they put a lot of money into the design of it as well, too. Just like back in the day when I was growing up, they put a lot of information and design into tobacco ads, whether they be in print form or on the television, anything like that. So they put a lot of money into this. And the vaping industry really took a page from the tobacco industry and followed along suit what the tobacco industry did when they were selling tobacco a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of it kind of goes with the culture. They try to make it, the colors and everything go in with the style of what people might wear and stuff like that too. So here we see a Mr. Vapor on the left, and then it looks like a Smoke Slim on the right. But the Mr. Vapors is something that has become a little bit more common because it is a disposable vape. So sometimes young people will take the disposable vapes into areas where they can hide. And if they are caught, then they will ditch it because it was something that they bought for maybe $5-6, as opposed to the big vapes and things that they would spend maybe $20 on and then refill. So the disposable ones here are not refillable, although these can be jailbroke too. Just like anything, it can be taken apart and put back together. So these can be jailbroke as well. A lot of the disposables don't necessarily have as much nicotine in them, but they are still they still have the chemical nicotine in it, so people will still be addicted if they try it and things like that. So this says, I quit ordinary smoking, heat not burn cigarettes. Kind of like it's kind of a facade, I think, that has been put out there. Not necessarily something that has taken off as much, but it's kind of, hey, if we heat up the cigarette instead of light it on fire, a different chemical combustion will happen, and we won't necessarily get tar and things in our lungs. But as we know, that there's a lot of things in the cigarette that is harmful for people if it's inhaled. So that's not necessarily the case. Miss Ashley, do you want to add to this?
Well, yeah, and then this also gets around. So in the state of Michigan, we have the law, the no smoking in like restaurants and public places like that law. And what they talked about when we saw a presentation regarding this is that the way that people with vaping devices get around it is because they're not combusting. It's not a flame. So when you light a cigarette, it's a combustion. And with the no heat, like with the heat not burn cigarette, you're not actually lighting on fire. So it's another way to kind of get around like the whole, like, is it like, are you lighting the cigarette, or is it more of like a vapor device? So this kind of is a way to continue using traditional tobacco, but getting around the combustion aspect of it.
I see. Okay. So this is kind of talking about how not only nicotine is not the only chemical that is used when vaping. Also, THC can be vaped as well. In this presentation, it says marijuana, but it says 11% vape marijuana in the last month in 2018, up 6% from 2017. So that was referencing college students. And then it says 15% vape nicotine in the last month, a jump of more than 9% from 2017. Then it also mentions at the bottom that hash oils can reach 95% pure THC, the psychoactive component in marijuana. High concentrations could cause side effects like temporary psychosis. So basically, the first stat is kind of showing us that the convenience of vaping marijuana has also caused it to become more popular, and along with nicotine. And also, a lot of studies show that the higher potency in THC is leading to more of an addiction or addictive side of marijuana, to where people are psychologically addicted to it, and certain things are happening with their mental state when they use it because of the high potency, and things like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder are actually magnified from it. So that's where somebody could go into a psychosis event. And there has been times where people have actually killed family members and themselves, unfortunately, because they were using THC products. So
yeah, so we know that THC is classified as, well, some people might not know, but like THC is classified as a hallucinogen. So in high enough potency, like Mr. Cody was saying, it does cause things like hallucinations and delusions, which lead to psychotic events or psychosis. And so that's where we're seeing issues, is these really high potency that you get from an oil, or like dabbing, which is a wax, or some edibles if someone's not like monitoring how much their intake is with edibles, which that's a whole nother presentation. But because, people don't monitor how much maybe they're taking in when they're vaping, it could be taking it to a level where it is activating a part of their brain that is hallucinating or causing psychosis.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so the last, you go back one. So the last one kind of talks about some other health concerns. It refers to some of the toxins that is found in marijuana smoke in similarity to tobacco smoke. So basically, any type of smoke or things that are inhaled into people's lungs typically carry something that isn't good for them. And a lot of the times when people are using these substances, they're using them in large amounts. A lot of the times when people use marijuana, they will hold it in their lungs longer than if they were to use tobacco, to try to achieve more of an effect. And henceforth leaving it in their lungs longer to affect them more. So also the next one says about 1 in 10 marijuana users will become addicted. For people who begin using before age of 18, that number rises to 1 in 6. So basically, if people wait till after they're 18, it's a lot less chance that they'll become addicted. And then also says marijuana use directly affects the brain, specifically the parts of the brain responsible for memory, learning, attention, decision-making, coordination, emotions, and reaction time. So all things that we would need in our life. If you think about it, if you're an athlete, if you're a musician, if you're an artist, if you like to exercise, if you are extremely smart, all those things would be affected if someone were to use THC. And also with, like we talked about with the vape pens, a lot of them have higher THC content, hence they will have stronger effects on people's brains. And another thing that it leads to is a lot of young people will develop a high tolerance due to the high THC content to marijuana, to where marijuana may not be a suitable drug for them anymore, and they may use another substance as an attempt to achieve a stronger high, or they might realize that marijuana maybe is not good for them and they'll stop. So either or could happen. But
Yeah, and I'll go over a couple of slides as well too. Thanks, Mr. Cody. So impairment signs, red or bloodshot eyes, delayed reaction time, distorted sense of your surroundings, poor coordination, feeling anxious or panicky, dizzy or tired, your body or eyelids might tremor, and divided attention. Of course, all of these would be things that, especially as a young person, middle or high schooler, we would need in order to do the work that we want to do while we're in school as well as outside of school. And again, the brain under the age of 25 is still developing. And so we want to make sure that we're going to get the best brain that we possibly can. And in order to do that, we want to stay away from products such as marijuana and nicotine, because it does have a negative effect on the brain. And then the THC concentration, potency, and mental health. You can see it can cause anxiety and paranoia, including schizophrenia, and long-lasting mental disorders. It's been linked, I should say, to depression, anxiety, and suicide. Those with mental health conditions are more likely to use higher potency cannabis products. And then also with the cannabis toxicity, the amount that somebody ingests, depending on the amount of THC that is in there. A lot of times they'll call it greening out, where they overdose on cannabis. It does not look the same as an overdose on other drugs. Some of the symptoms would be a rapid heart rate, which obviously could include the risk of a heart attack, hallucinations and paranoia, like Miss Ashley had talked about, loss of body control movements, panic attacks, anxiety, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, seizures. If you can imagine if someone was high on cannabis, marijuana, and they were driving a vehicle or they were operating some form of machinery, and they had some or more than one of these problems associated with that toxicity, and it would cause them to have problems driving, operating machinery, so on and so forth. And then this is just a diagram, talks about adult current cigarette smoking rate compared to e-cigarette use by age groups. And you can see as people get older, the amount of cigarette use versus the amount of e-cigarettes. So 18 to 24 is the age range that is the highest for e-cigarettes. And this was taken out of a survey from 2017. And this is a little bit of a condensed slide, but you can see several different counties listed on the left-hand side. And one of the years is 2018, which is in orange, and the other year is 2016. If you just simply look all the way down the slide at the blue, in every instance, in every county, the number of people using e-cigarettes went up from the year 2016 to the year 2018. So that's every county, some of them significantly. And of course, we're in Macomb County, and you can see the numbers for Macomb County there, which would be right about here. And then 2019 National Youth Tobacco Survey, some of the preliminary results. Looks like 27.5 high schoolers using e-cigarettes in the past 30 days, which is up from 20.8% in 2018. That is a significant number when it comes to percentage points. It is 6.7% higher than it was in 2018 versus 2019. Use of cigarettes among 8th, 10th, and 12th graders has more than doubled since 2017. And then you can see here tobacco product use among high school students. And it talks about any tobacco, e-cigarettes, cigars, cigarettes, smokeless tobacco, hookah, and then pipe. And 6.2 million middle and high school students were current past 30-day users of some type of tobacco in 2019. And again, that's the National Youth Tobacco Survey.
As you can see on that one too, the use of cigarettes is fairly low. So essentially, there's a bunch of young people that understand that traditional tobacco isn't necessarily good for them. And my personal belief is that's something that the e-cigarette companies realize is, hey, these people aren't necessarily going to be going for traditional tobacco anymore. We need to find a way to still get them to use nicotine. So they're definitely doing something different that is getting people to use e-cigarettes as opposed to traditional tobacco. Because it's the same chemical. It's the same thing that those two people are chasing, but one thing is more appealing, obviously, and the other thing isn't. It just is very convenient for a young person to use an e-cigarette as opposed to a cigarette. That's probably reflected there. So
then it talks about the young adult brain. Again, human brain matures at age about 25. Again, that doesn't mean that people's brains, that we don't stop learning at the age of 25 or older. We just learn in different ways because our brain is fully developed. Again, if someone is using products, abusing substances or using substances in general, and they're under the age of 25, it's going to have much more of a dramatic effect on their brain than it would for someone who is over 25. That would include alcohol as well too. And again, the middle one there says it talks about addiction being more likely the earlier one initiates. So the sooner someone starts, the more difficult it is for them to stop, and it just is an ongoing process, which is difficult. Also can cause some mood disorders, lower impulse control, attention, and learning problems. All things, again, that we would need in order to really do well in our schoolwork. So why the rise in e-cigarette use? Targeted tobacco industry marketing. Again, we talked about that. They took a page out of Big Tobacco. And then there's, of course, the flavors. And we also talked about the lack of regulation. And with the Food and Drug Administration, at some point, they probably will be the centerpiece for regulation. But as it stands right now, if I'm not mistaken, that information has been stopped until at least, I believe it's 2021. And there may be some court decision that extends it even beyond 2021 as well too. So we might not see that regulation for a while now. And then these are just a bunch of different flavors. As you can see, they take different names that are similar to some of the things that we've seen before, the Dr. Pepper, Sundrop. Again, with the different colors, you can see all the different 19 different flavor selections, so there's a lot of different flavors for people. When we're talking about, again, Mr. Cody brought this up, traditional tobacco, it's either going to be in a pipe form, or it's going to be in a cigarette form or a cigar form. And sometimes with a pipe or a cigar, you can have a different flavor to it. But most of the time when it comes to traditional tobacco and cigarettes, unless it's menthol, it's going to have a very similar taste to it. And it's going to have a very distinct odor to it as well, too. And a number of young people, I would say the majority of young people, they don't care for that odor, which with the e-cigarette products, that odor is not necessarily there, especially that strong odor from traditional tobacco. And I'll move it along to Miss Ashley if she wants to go through a few more.
All right, and I'm gonna apologize because they're cutting the grass out by my house, so if you hear really loud noises, I'm sorry. All right, so this is kind of what Mr. Joe was just talking about. Back in 2018, the FDA proposed to restrict the sale of some flavors. And I know there was a move towards getting rid of the mint flavored, the menthol, because of how it does affect the lungs, which is what it says in the bottom one. It rose up to 63.9% from 51% in 2018 for high schoolers. So it wasn't as much of, so when they banned the flavors, they then transitioned to more of like the mint, as opposed, because, you know, the flavors weren't available. So they just transitioned to the mint when it was available. But I know there was some talk of like, hey, the mint and menthol isn't really great for the lungs, so maybe we should be banning that also. So trendy products, if you look at these, they're kind of fun. Star Wars, you know, I don't want to say anything because, you know, this is going on the internet. I don't want us to get banned for saying a product that we would have to get sponsorship to talk about. But as you can see, they have characters on them and sports teams, and they're fun and glittery that, like, it doesn't look as boring as, say, a cigarette. It's kind of, you can show your personality with it. So, you know, it might be more appealing to someone that's younger. We used to just like bedazzle our clothes. Now they bedazzle those.
Yeah.
I didn't mean for that to rhyme. All right, so social media marketing. I'm sure everyone kind of got a little bit of a look at when Juul got in trouble for their social media marketing. They were using very colorful backgrounds, and the pictures were really fun, and they were using young models. So the models looked like, you know, could they be like 16, 17, or are they actually like 21, 22? Like the models in the one, she has a tattoo. They look like they might be a little bit older, but they're still really young. Where when you look at some of the other vaping companies, they use like older males to kind of like encourage people who were looking for smoking cessation. But Juul did a big social media platform where it was really encouraging younger use, or was kind of aimed towards younger use, you know, social media, Twitter, that's kind of used by high schoolers, things like that. But also if you look, like, you don't really see as much of the product. I mean, you can see the one girl is holding it, but it's not like it's advertising the product, it's advertising the type of person that would use it.
I don't think anyone was legitimately vaping in that pose and someone took a picture of them. I think that was deliberately done to be like, hey, look how sweet I look with my Juul.
And
then
I'll mention too, sorry to cut you off there, Miss Ashley.
No, you're fine.
I'll mention too that I go to a number of different websites that have different vape products. And of course, you have the option of putting your name in there, and they'll send you information, which I've done in the past. And believe it or not, on Mother's Day, on Sunday, I received an email that said 20% off Mother's Day only, which I thought was bad in many ways. But that's just some of the marketing that they do.
Maybe. But yeah, so you can see like that's kind of targeting different audiences. You're going towards people who are going to be more into electric music. Then like, I can't think of what type of racing that is.
F1, Formula One?
Formula One, yeah, Formula One racing. I'm like, I don't follow any of that. But you can see like they are targeting different audiences that are going to be more likely to use their product. And the next one, this was the Juul advertisement that I was talking about. It was very colorful. It's kind of modern and chic with like the shapes and things like that, but those are also aimed towards what their different flavors are, because their flavor packets are colorful to match whatever flavor it is. So like that says cool cucumber, so it's kind of like a really pretty like aqua green color. Like I really like that color actually. But it's to kind of, see, look, it like gets your attention. And then saying like Mondays don't need to be hard because people associate the use of nicotine or vaping products with like, oh, I'm so stressed out, I need to go hit my Juul, need to go hit my pen, things like that. But it's like, make your day better by using this device instead of viewing things like meditation. It doesn't say that, but that's where I take it. Lack of regulation. So once again, because it is not traditional tobacco, it does not have to abide by the same rules that tobacco is under. So like, I forgot what year it was, but tobacco, I think it was, I forgot, I normally know this, but when tobacco was told, hey, you're not allowed to advertise on TV and print or anything like that, there was a very strict law that was put into place. That doesn't apply to vaping devices. I know more recently they've been starting to cut down on it. But I know, like, there were times I'd be driving in my car and I heard the same Juul commercial over and over again about, oh, it helped me quit cigarettes. It gave me my life back. I didn't realize how much I was smoking before that. And so there weren't those regulations on it. And where they set the different things, there's been studies that prove that how they advertise the product, they're telling people to put them at eye level. Like, they'll be like, oh, put it at this many inches above the ground, which happens to be at eye level for most teenagers or most individuals. So it's really drawn to advertise to a specific audience, as much as they might say they're not. Like, they're not saying, hey, this is for teenagers, but they're like, hey, we're going to put it where teenagers are most likely to see it.
Yeah, and I'll mention too, I believe
And that's what the point of sale is like where it's put.
And I'll mention too as well, I believe that it was 1998 was the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement, which basically pointed in the direction of TV, radio, billboard, and point of sales were changed. Yeah. So no longer advertise in certain things. And that was introduced by a number of different states in the United States. So that changed things dramatically. I know I just had a conversation with my father, who is 76 years old, and he was talking about times that he flew on airplanes, and of course people at that time could smoke on airplanes. So you can think of that cylinder of an airplane, and there's 200 plus people on there at the time, way back when, and everybody, or the majority of people I should say, were smoking, which obviously very, very devastating and not good for the lungs. And some health concerns here with dual use, so using tobacco as well as e-cigarettes, the flavorings, and then of course there's primary, secondary, and third-hand aerosol exposure. So you don't necessarily have to be the person that's actually using the e-cigarette product. You could be an innocent bystander as well too. And again, that runs parallel to traditional tobacco, where there have been studies that have been done where we found out that, let's say a husband and wife are married, the husband smokes, the wife does not smoke. Unfortunately, the wife develops lung cancer, and the only thing that they can pin it on is the fact that the husband smoked traditional tobacco. So we know that just because somebody doesn't smoke, we know that other people that are around them can actually be affected, and sometimes in a deadly way. We can't say that as it stands right now in regards to e-cigarettes, because we just don't have enough information. We haven't had enough time for the studies to be out there. So again, though, we do have the primary, and then the second hand, and then the third hand aerosol exposure. So even if you're in a car and you're not the person that's using the e-cigarette or the device, it still can affect you in a negative way.
Yeah, and that third hand is basically like if someone's juice were to like spill, or it got on a surface and someone were to touch it, or even if there was like residue that was left somewhere and the person touched it and they absorbed it through their hand, that's like what third hand would be. So I know second hand sounds pretty, like we know what second hand is, but third hand is when you have exposure to it, whether it's a residue that's left on a surface or if it's like spilt, and that's how the person comes in contact with it.
Yeah, and that's the majority of the time. That,
you want me to continue with the slides? Oh, sorry.
That's the majority of the time. That's okay, Mr. Cody. The majority of the time that the Centers for Disease Control, or Poison Control is called, is what Miss Ashley's talking about with that third hand. All right, yeah, Mr. Cody, you want to hop in?
You want to hop in? All right, yeah. Thank you, Miss Ashley. So one thing that is kind of being studied now and has been being studied for the past couple of years, but hasn't really have enough research done on it to say for sure, are the health impacts from vaping. But but there are some things mentioned here. One of them being pneumonia. So a way that vaping can actually cause pneumonia in someone is when the aerosol is inhaled, it can actually am I breaking up? No? Okay, so when the aerosol is inhaled, it can actually settle in people's lungs as a liquid. And when that's done, it causes a self-induced pneumonia in people, and they actually have to go into the doctor's office and get their lungs suctioned out. And when that's done, they suction out actual colored liquid that is not mucus. That is the reason why they have pneumonia. So it's actually self-induced pneumonia from people actually putting the liquid into their lungs. And also you can see as asthma, cardiovascular disease, skin disorders, a lot of oral health due to the aerosol being very hot and having certain chemicals in it that also leave residue on the teeth, disorientation, and as well as seizure. So a lot of health impacts that have been reported already. I'll go next one.
Miss Leah, you want to jump?
So some vape-related respiratory illnesses and injuries. What was that?
I was just going to see if Miss Leah wanted to jump in, but go ahead, Mr. Cody.
All right, so some of the lung injuries that have been reported were from using THC products. They do believe they're, THC products and then only nicotine-containing products. There's a lot of talk about it being black market products and things like that, but still the black market came from the market and the demand that there is from there. So there's also health officials have yet to determine whether one or more e-cigarette or vaping products, substances, brands, or methods of use is responsible for the outbreak. So there isn't necessarily a full amount of research done yet to decide what is necessarily causing these lung illnesses. But there are stuff out there. There are illnesses that have occurred and injuries that have occurred, like Mr. Joe was mentioning, someone getting a double lung transplant earlier this year or maybe late last year. So next one.
Miss Leah, you want to jump in?
So some symptoms that
Yeah,
we can go.
I can jump in if Mr. Cody doesn't want to do this. All right, so patients who have had vaping-related illnesses have reported coughs, shortness of breath, or chest pain, nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea, fatigue, fever, or abdominal pain. Some patients have reported that their symptoms developed over a few days, while others have reported that their symptoms developed over several weeks. A lung infection does not appear to be causing the symptoms. The CDC recommends seeing a medical provider right away. You can also call your local poison control center.
All right. Some safety concerns, Miss Leah?
Yeah, so some safety concerns related to vapes is explosions, charger danger, fires, poisonings, and hazardous waste and litter.
And this is just a picture of someone who had an explosion and how it affected you can see their skull there with their teeth and things of that nature. And then, unfortunately, this is what can happen. You can lose some teeth, and that can be very costly. Miss Leah?
Yes, some social concerns is it becoming like a social norm that people, all people vape and things like that. So it's marketed to maintain addiction and not cause addiction, and we're finding that it does cause addiction. Playing out of the big tobacco's playbook, back on TV, in the workplace, in schools, false health claims and aims at use. You can see on the left that Leonardo DiCaprio is vaping, so that's kind of leading towards people saying, oh, he's like one of my role models, so I'm gonna vape just like him.
And something that this was made before all of the COVID outbreak and everything like that. But another social concern is obviously that typically when people use these devices, it's a social thing. It's, they might be with friends, they're sharing. So then Obviously, people have cut back on that because of the social distancing, but still it is something that, you know, you're exchanging spit because, you know, you're putting it in your mouth. But also, as we talked about earlier, with the damage it does to your lungs, the heating up of your lungs and the chemical burns and things like that, it's putting some people at a higher risk of either of worsening of the virus if they contract it or things like that. So it's a whole nother reason for people to quit using it at this time, because it makes them more susceptible for like a worsened infection as opposed to someone who doesn't. But there's still research that they're doing on that. There's no like 100% to say, but we can assume if something is affecting your lungs and your cardiovascular health, we shouldn't be doing other things to damage it further.
Perfect.
And another thing to kind of add on to the marketing, I know it's a little off topic. You guys hear me?
Yep.
Is it breaking up?
Nope.
Good now?
Yep.
No? All right, you guys can go. I'll just...
That's all right. Yeah, again, we get into the technology world, and these things seem to happen. I can tell you right now that in my apartment here where I'm at, downstairs, there's somebody that is putting a new door in. And so I don't know that this is going to go over our recording, but hopefully it doesn't. But here's electronic cigarettes in Michigan. There were some bills that were introduced. We talked about that in regards to legislation. Problems that can be caused by defining e-cigarettes separately from tobacco products. Again, appeal to the youth, confusion with the federal deeming rule, not subject to the same evidence-based measures that govern tobacco products. They're not taxed, not covered by the state's smoke-free air law. Ms. Ashley talked a little bit about that with the non-combustible cigarette, so it doesn't have, you know, that wafting in the air of a smoke. Lack of advertising restrictions, still marketed on TV, radio, social media. That has been down a little bit in regards to TV, radio, social media. And Ms. Leah, you want to jump in for this one?
Yeah, so some national data on tobacco-free colleges and universities. So at least 2,469 are 100% smoke-free campus sites. Of these 2,044 are 100% tobacco-free. 2,074 prohibit e-cigarette use, and 1,089 prohibit hookah use. 477 prohibit smoking and vaping marijuana. 528 explicitly apply all tobacco protections to personal vehicles on campus. So people who are on campus, even in their vehicles, cannot smoke tobacco.
So what can schools do?
I don't know if it's
Can you
just
guys
on my
hear me?
computer, but Miss Leah, you're frozen.
Yep, Ms. Leah's, if that's okay. Can we still hear?
I can hear you, but your face is frozen.
Well, I'll go.
Okay.
Oh, I'll go with it. So what can schools do? Include.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Okay, so I'll just go through this. What can schools do? Include e-cigarettes, hookah, marijuana, and model tobacco-free policies. Include enforcement provisions and policy, the carrot and stick. Educate and obtain buy-in from campus populations. Continue to educate. Spread the word. Use online resources creatively. Educate and engage affected populations at all stages to ensure success. What can schools do? Continuing, post signage. As you can see, all these different areas that you can put signage down. And again, what can schools do? As well as if you're interested in quitting. So here's some resources that can help. Talk to someone, and it's got a number there. And again, some more information in regarding how we can stop the spread of people using e-cigarette products, how we can reduce the access. And then this is the couple final slides here. these are the different resources that were used for this PowerPoint presentation. Then we have the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services new cigarette webpage. The Truth Initiative, This is Quitting. So this obviously is a text device as well too that people can use. And then Quit Tobacco Resources, State of Michigan. And then finally, questions. So these are two individuals at the State of Michigan, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. And with that, we will conclude our presentation unless Ms. Ashley or Mr. Cody or Ms. Leah have anything else to say. Again, we appreciate your time on behalf of Macomb Family Services. Have a very good day. We hope to see all the students in the classrooms, middle and high school students, very soon. Thank you.
Bye, guys.